Director Mueller, thank you so much for your service. I've enjoyed working with you over the years. I recall, in particular, when you arrived at the FBI after 9/11, and I took note of the fact that the computer system at the premier investigative agency for law enforcement in the United States of America on 9/11 was as archaic as anything anyone could imagine. The computer system you inherited at the FBI had no access to the internet, had no word search capability, and was unable to transmit materials and documents. The photographs of the suspected terrorists on 9/11 were sent to the FBI offices across America by overnight mail because they couldn't be sent by the computer system that you inherited. We had many conversations, some attempts, some missteps. Tell me today, where are we 12 years later in terms of the computer system of your agency?
One of the reasons for staying the last a couple of years is to get over the hump in terms of the computer systems. We have this computer system called Sentinel that has been operative for the last 2 years. It's cutting edge in terms of case management. Many of our other programs we have not only upgraded but are now incorporating in a much more effective network. But I will tell you, it was one of the most frustrating aspects of this job is trying to adapt new technology in an institution that has unique business practices and to try to modify those business practices at the same time and upgrade those business practices at the same time you're trying to adapt to new technology, particularly with the contracting mechanisms within the federal government, where if you have a 5-year contract, things are going to change, new technologies are going to come along, and the fact of the matter is there's very little room in those contracts for any ability to change, to adapt to the times. But if you had seen, I mean, I vividly remember being in our intelligence, what we call SIOC, intelligence operations room, in September 11th, and the papers stacked up. And in Boston, we were back in the same place, and there's not a piece of paper to be seen. And also, to the credit of the Bureau, the ability to identify those two individuals in Boston within 48 hours after it occurred, utilizing the various technologies in our laboratory, as well as up there, is, I think, testament to the fact that we've come a long ways. Still ways to go, but we've come a long ways.
Well, let me just say, for the record, in addition to bringing integrity to the position which you have, in addition to helping keeping America safe with an extraordinary degree of success, I think your legacy is going to include this, that the information technology available in your department is now meeting 21st century standards, where when you inherited it, it was, as you say, a creation of, quote, unique business practices. I think you're being very kind in that characterization.
Can I just add one thing? We're okay today, but as you well know, technology costs money. And in the sequestration, I'll put in another plug, this is an issue that all too often gets overlooked and perhaps cut, and it should not be, because you cannot run an institution like ours unless you stay current with the latest technology.
And sequestration is, the way it's been characterized, the way it's been implemented, is a pervasive problem. I met yesterday with Director Clapper, and he talked about the impact of sequestration on doing checks on employees for security clearances. We've had to reduce the number of checks of those current employees when it comes to security. And now we're dealing with one former contractual employee who has disclosed things which were very important to our national security. Speaking of that issue, on Section 215, which you've been queried about quite a bit, I've offered an amendment over the years to try to limit the metadata collection in terms of specific suspicion. That was the original standard. It eventually was changed with FISA Act reauthorization. But yesterday, the Department of Justice, I hope you're aware of, released publicly, according to reports we have, the standards for searching the database of phone records when there is, quote, reasonable suspicion based on specific and articulated facts that the information sought is, quote, associated with a specific foreign terrorist organization. The standard that they released yesterday, which they are now going to use, is actually stricter than the standard that I'd been proposing over the years for the limitations on 215. Can Section 215, do you believe, be revised to require connection to a suspected terrorist without affecting the ability to obtain useful information?
I'm a little bit confused because the, what do we call it, selector, the telephone number that is run against the database has to be identified as being, I don't want to say it, meet the reasonable suspicion standard with regard to terrorist attacks. That particular phone number. Yes. That's an appropriate standard for that particular phone number because you can't pick a phone number out of the blue or for some other thing. You have to have it tied into terrorism, and then it's pushed against the database. Now, I don't know whether your standard as you are supporting it is the standard you apply to collection of the records or the standard you apply to identifying the selector against the data, which you're going to use, which you're going to put against the database. If you see the distinction,
our standard is on the collection of the records.
See, I think that's a little bit different. The standard we're talking about here is the identification of the selector that you are going to run against that database of records.
So if the provider, if the telephone provider, for example, were to retain the records for 5 years, and you would have access through our government agencies and through our processes to access those records for government purposes if there is a suspicion, would that meet the needs of collecting the information to keep us safe?
I don't, and not in the same way the program does now for several reasons. First of all, you'd have to go to a number of telephone companies. You'd have to get legal process and go to a number of telephone companies. Then you have to hope that those telephone companies have some records retention capability. I can assure you it's not going to be 5 years.
Not today.
Not today.
It could be required of them, though.
It could be. It could be. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but you're asking me if there's a distinction between the program run today and how you propose to perhaps amend it. And there's some downsides. You know, the balance is for Congress to decide, but there are downsides in terms of the time it would take to serve it, the time it would take for them to get it, and in every one of these cases, time is of the essence. You do not want to have to delay 6 months or a year to get the information to prevent the next terrorist attack.
We've been very patient with your time, and I thank you for your service, Director Mueller. Wish you the best.
Thank you.